Hello, friends. Now you will hear a brief summary of the movie Boy Wonder. Enjoy watching. When Sean was 9 years old, his mother was murdered right before his eyes. Now a teenager, he attends high school. He trains a lot and, for some reason, is studying chemistry in depth. While riding the subway, Sean saw an aggressive vagrant and wanted to get out of the train as soon as possible. Sean lives with his father, Terry. The man was glad to hear that his distant son was going to a party with a friend. It was surprising that he even made a friend at all. Meanwhile, Terry visited his wife's grave and talked about how things were going with Sean. He still hadn't come to terms with the loss, just like his son. Instead of going to the party, Sean changed clothes and wandered into a criminal part of the city. He silently watched a dealer sell a dose to a woman who had come there with a teenage girl. The thugs noticed Sean and started harassing him. They knocked him to the ground and began beating him, but suddenly, Sean fought back. After taking down his attackers, he seized a gun and aimed it at the gang members. The dealer tried to take his weapon back but ended up getting shot instead. Detective Teresa Rhymes had recently been promoted. She was determined to put away a notorious criminal. But Larry, the crook, planned to cut a deal with the prosecutor. He threatened that as soon as he was free, he would come after Teresa and her young son. Teresa met her new partner, a chauvinist and racist named Gary. Sean frequently visits this police station. He is friends with the chief, Bill Baldwin. That evening, Teresa noticed a strange boy and tried to find out what he was doing there. The kid ran away, but she discovered that he was looking up information about a toxin called tricellerone. Later, when Teresa found her car's tire flat, she tried to change it. Sean silently observed her, and when she noticed him, he offered to help. Grateful, Teresa offered to give him a ride, but, as usual, he took the subway instead. When Terry came home with groceries, he heard Sean hitting a punching bag in the basement. The boy was so absorbed in his training that he almost struck his father. Terry used to box as well. He hopes to find common ground with his son, but it's not working out. And it's no surprise, when Sean was little, his father used to beat him and his mother severely. Terry was a real bastard. At the station, one of the dead dealer's associates was in custody. Gary was convinced that this man was the one who killed the dealer, so he saw no reason to investigate further. Teresa asked her colleagues about the strange boy. When Sean's mother was murdered before his eyes, he started coming to the station regularly to study photographs of criminals. It was against the rules, but Chief Bill allowed him to do it. Teresa offered Sean her help. She was a good detective. When Sean was alone, he made a call from a new phone and asked someone to find him a girl. He had called Joe, a pimp who abused his sick worker. The scumbag dragged Lizzie outside and shoved her toward his car. At that moment, Sean attacked him. The bald brute fought back and beat up the high schooler. Then, he pulled a bat out of the trunk. Meanwhile, Sean armed himself with a telescopic baton. With it, he knocked the pimp down. The thug backed off and ordered the girl to go home. According to him, Sean hadn't saved the poor thing, he had only made things worse. He would be back soon to beat her within an inch of her life. Hearing this, Sean pulled out the dealer's gun and shot the bald bastard. At home, he treated his wounds and remembered how he had ended up at the police station after his mother's murder. In the morning, Teresa interrogated the prostitute, but Lizzie couldn't describe the killer. He was dressed all in black, the street was dark, and besides, Joe was a scumbag. He had already killed one young worker before, and Lizzie was next in line. So, it was unlikely anyone would help the investigation. To her, the unknown man was a hero, not a criminal. Teresa learned that Larry Childs would likely be released. Because of this case, her marriage had fallen apart. Meanwhile, Sean kept training hard at the gym to stay in shape. At the morgue, Teresa remembered tricellerone and asked the coroners about it. It was a rare poison that irritated the muscular system. The muscles swelled up and suffocated the victim, meaning the person was killed by their own body, not the poison itself. Moreover, tricellerone was very difficult to detect. Terry was trying to be a good father. He even watched a cooking show to prepare a delicious dinner for his killer son. Sean had a hard time dealing with violence in society, especially against women and children. Teresa invited the kid to lunch. She had studied Sean's case and wanted to get to know him better. The woman admitted that her son lived with her ex-husband because she was always busy with work. At the restaurant, a rude cashier insulted Teresa in Chinese, calling her a pushy bitch. "I hope you choke, freak," added the cook's wife. Sean understood Chinese and threatened to put a bullet in both of their heads if they didn't watch their mouths. Unfortunately, Teresa hadn't found anything new in his case. It looked like a simple robbery. 9 years had passed, it was time for the young man to start living a normal life. But Sean wouldn't stop until he found the killer. He didn't believe in justice, especially when Larry Childs was about to be released under the Witness Protection Program, despite having killed 2 people. Teresa directly asked Sean why he was interested in tricellarone. The high schooler replied that he was simply writing a paper on the history of poisons. Today, the whole station was saying goodbye to the chief, who was retiring. Teresa told her partner that both recent victims, the dealer and the pimp, were child murderers. She suspected that the same person had killed them. She decided to talk to the chief about Sean. Baldwin told Teresa to leave the boy alone, his mind was already a mess. There was no need to encourage him. The drunk cops were heading home by subway when suddenly a passenger rushed into the car, begging them to break up a fight between 2 men. It was that same deranged vagrant who constantly harassed women. Now, he had found another victim to torment. Sean entered the car in his nighttime attire. Right before the attack, he had applied war paint to his face and put on brass knuckles. He approached the brute and started landing blows. Taking down this beast wasn't easy. But eventually, the drunkard was on the floor, begging for mercy. Sean didn't stop. He turned the thug's face into a bloody mess and ran out of the car only when the police arrived. Teresa chased after the Night Avenger but couldn't catch him. At home, Sean was met by his father. Terry had discovered that his son was injecting testosterone and taking steroids. He lost his temper. He wanted to know what Sean was doing at night and why he was always covered in bruises, but he got no answers. Before beating up the vagrant, the Avenger had asked a Chinese family to leave the car, meaning he spoke Chinese. That night, Sean dreamt that Teresa arrested him. But in reality, it was his father who woke him up. Today was Sean's birthday, and Terry had a surprise for him. He took his son to a cafe where he used to have lunch with his wife before Sean was even born. After the attack, Terry had moved with his son to a safer neighborhood. The cafe owner called Terry by his old nickname Rock. Like Rocky Balboa. He used to be a real brawler and ran with a bad crowd. Next, they went to a local gym to watch a kickboxing tournament. At the end of the day, Terry took Sean to the place where his mother was murdered. He told his son that his mother died that day, but he didn't. Sean had to keep living. Terry remembered what a bastard he used to be, how much pain he had caused Sean and his late wife. But he had started a new life and wanted his son to do the same. Meanwhile, Teresa visited Baldwin at his home to talk about Sean again. The man recalled the first time he met the boy. He had asked him to look at photos of criminals, and Sean immediately pointed at one. "That's my mother's killer." But Terry had denied it. The boy looked at his father as if he were insane. Still, Terry convinced his son to say he was mistaken. Now, Baldwin was hearing that name again after 9 years. It was Larry Childs, the same scumbag Teresa was trying to put behind bars. When his name reappeared in the news, Sean became obsessed. He was 100% sure that Larry had killed his mother. And he believed his father had betrayed him. Sean found Teresa while she was spending time with her son. She was wary of him now. She didn't want to let her child anywhere near a suspect. But Sean had only come to tell her one thing: he was starting a new life. Everything will change now. That night, for the first time, Sean finally went to a party. Teresa followed him, though she wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing. Sean's partner called and informed him that Childs received only 2 years in prison, after which he would be placed in the Witness Protection Program. At the party, Sean met a pretty girl from his school. She was curious about where he got all his bruises. A school bully, who had harassed the blonde girl before, started bothering her again. He was supposedly her boyfriend, but she was clearly unhappy about it. Suddenly, memories flooded Sean's mind. He recalled how, right before attacking his mother, the killer called his father Rock. That meant he knew him. At that moment, Sean saw the bully grab the blonde's hair. He brutally beat the guy, but that wasn't enough for the Avenger. He grabbed a fire poker and started smashing the bully's internal organs. Anyone who tried to stop him got hurt as well. Sean took his friend's car keys and drove off somewhere. Teresa followed him. Finally, Sean remembered exactly what had happened that night. Terry owed a large sum of money. When it came time to pay up, the thug killed his mother, and his father did nothing to stop it. When Terry returned home, he assumed a burglar had broken in. He called 911, but then he found his son in the basement. Earlier, Sean had broken into the police station and found an old photo of his father with Larry. Terry had his wife killed for money. He received a hefty insurance payout and used it to settle his debt with Larry. But Terry denied it all, arguing that Sean hadn't recognized Larry in the photo back then. So why would he be right now? Sean's version of events was complete nonsense. Did he really think his father was such a monster? Teresa entered the house. Sean didn't run. He told the detective that his father had killed his mother along with Larry Childs to collect the insurance money. His father's body was lying in the basement. Sean asked for help, and Teresa helped him avoid punishment by throwing the gun into the river. After all, to the authorities, it would look like a random burglar had broken into the house. Sean then wrote a letter to Childs, telling him his story. He forgave the criminal for what he did to his mother, but he needed to know if his father was truly an accomplice. Childs didn't even need to write anything. Sean enclosed 2 stamps, one black, meaning his father was guilty, and one red, meaning he was innocent. Childs licked one of the stamps and placed it on the envelope. Sometime later, the inmate started feeling unwell. He began to suffocate and soon died from exposure to the poison that had been applied to the stamp. Sean received a letter with a red stamp. And that's where the movie ends. See you soon, and take care.